Live from the edge of the Great Red Divide, from that little blue island in the middle of America, this is the Heartland Mamas podcast, and I'm your host, Heidi Henry. Today, we're going to talk about news sources and how you can check and see if what you're reading or hearing is really accurate. The first story that was given to me today was from a listener who asked if I had heard or watched the NFL Super Bowl, which I did not. My husband and I went shopping last night, and we did not watch the Super Bowl. They asked me if I heard all the cheering for Trump and just wondered what was up with that. And I thought, well, that's very odd. You know, I couldn't believe really that crowd was cheering for Trump. I mean, the NFL owners, not the players. Seriously. Um, so I did some investigating and I found that only in America, only in the USA, did you hear Trump being cheered when he was on the field and up in the skybox. All over the rest of the world, Canada, every other country in the world, had heard him being booed, and they heard the booing very loudly. So it led me to examine some of the audio that I heard. I watched the feed for the Super Bowl that went out over the air in the United States, and I watched it in a couple of other countries. And what I came away with is Fox Sports had covered the boos with some pre-tracked audio of cheering. It's almost a canned cheering, if you will, if you listen to it. It's like I've heard this before somewhere. And they also played booing when Taylor Swift was shown in this country, but in other countries there was cheering when she was shown. So that makes me understand that every part of that Super Bowl was set up to appease Donald Trump. Every part of that Super Bowl was part of bringing fascism to America. It was propaganda. There's no doubt about it. But what we heard yesterday was propaganda. And that makes me want to think about where I get my other news sources from. Because certainly the first place I went to um, was The Guardian. And I have The Guardian, which is a UK publication, and I have the app on my phone. And that's where I started. And then I went through several YouTube tracks, some other TikTok tracks, and then I started tracking it around the world with the video feed that they had listed. So I was able to go to the source and listen to it. And even Armed Forces Radio, that carried the Super Bowl in real time, had booze. So I just want you to know that the boos were out there, and what we were programmed to hear in America, in the United States, was cheering for Orange Caligula. Ah! So there is a concerted effort to make sure that Donald Trump's ego is stroked every opportunity that happens. And we've watched the mainstream media across the board capitulate to him. We've watched all the major news outlets, all the standard ones, ABC, CBS, NBC, plus all of the cable news. And you know from previous videos I've done, I don't watch cable news. I never have. I can't tell you any of the players except Rachel Maddow, and that's because I've listened to a few of her books. So I don't watch cable TV. I don't really watch any mainstream TV. Sometimes I watch WGN out of Chicago, and that's about it. And maybe 15, 20 minutes of that tops in the morning. That's about all I have time for, except like today we have this major snowstorm coming in on Wednesday in my area, and I'm so excited because we could get up to 10 inches of snow, and I can't wait because uh, I, I live on a farm, and we are moisture poor in our soil. We ended last year with in a drought period, and we haven't gotten enough snow to make up for it. So our soil moisture levels are really low, and that doesn't mean anything to you maybe, except if you eat food, you should pay attention to this. And we've had a couple episodes on the farm bill, and we will come back to that because there's some disturbance in the forest there. Trump is pissing off the farmers right now. You need to know, and that's not going to be in mainstream media. But we've watched, getting back to this, we've watched all the major newspapers. Most people read them online anymore instead of in newsprint. We've watched them all cave. And we all read On Tyranny, right? We read it when it first came out. And then we reread it after this inauguration, right? Or after the November 5th election. So we know that the first thing that you don't do is capitulate ahead of time. You don't give in. You don't give in. You stand your frickin' ground. But because Trump keeps bringing up these frivolous lawsuits, he's forcing all these news entities to monitor what they say and to give power to his speech, which is a bold-faced lie. So we have to remember that they're under a lot of duress right now. Multi-million-dollar lawsuits are going on against these newspapers and standard TV shows, right? The news that's on TV. He keeps suing them. And even if it's frivolous and even if they probably win, it's going to cost him a fortune to defend them. So they're caving in and giving in to him right away, right? They're giving in to him ahead of time, if you will, and capitulating and telling him that it's fine. He can do whatever he wants. I want you to know that it's important for you to resource sources in your phone via apps or on your laptop, desktop, tablet, whatever you use. You need to download a few apps that are going to give you the absolute truth, that are going to give you news from outside the country about what's going on in the USA, because those news sources have not capitulated to Donald Trump yet. And hopefully they won't, because even though it's in our Constitution to have freedom of the press, the only freedom of the press we have right now are these podcasts. Some independent news organizations that have formed. The Contrarian is one of them. And if you're not following the Contrarian, do it now, because a lot of the broadcasters have left the standard media, have left the major media, the behemoths of media, and gone to the Contrarian to be able to report accurately to you. But I want you to download The Guardian, BBC, Reuters, NPR, and Al Jazeera, their apps on your phone, and take your information from them, because I have found their information since about August, September to be far more truthful and full, built out. Like it's all built out with sources and everything. Since the middle of August, roughly, I found it to be far more in depth and informative and truthful than any of our U.S.-based news sources. And that is a sad fact of life, of the time we live in. So those are things that I read on my phone. I also have noticed that a lot of the people that worked for some of these big organizations that have been furloughed have started new TikTok and YouTube channels. And they are the officials that served our community and our country for decades. So take a look at some of those. And I know TikTok and I are kind of back and forth sometimes, because I don't know quite where it's going right now. But I have found that a lot of the independent journalists, modern journalists, the non-typical journalists are coming up there, because it's a free source for them to share their authenticated information, especially on communicable disease. I mean, that's a huge one. We can't get that information. Do you know there's a news blackout? The CDC cannot send anything out about the measles outbreak in Nebraska or the tuberculosis outbreaks in both Kansas and Ohio. They can't talk about that. They can't tell you how many people are sick and dying from influenza A, influenza B, bird flu. Do you know there's 2 kinds of bird flu right now? You're not going to get that from mainstream media anymore. Not as long as Orange Caligula is in office. You're not going to get it. So you're going to need to find other sources. If I haven't said that once, I've said it a million times. Find other sources. Even your local media. In my area, it's something called Shaw Media. Shaw has gobbled up all the little small town papers and most of the suburban papers, plus all of the local radio stations. So they only regurgitate what they want you to hear. And the rest is all their fluff for Donald Trump, or to try to steer you into believing that fascism is the right course for America. And it's not. I have a subscription to my local newspaper, which I get online. I've actually taken their app off my phone, and but I can look at it on my desktop, because I'm a writer. I write on my desktop all the time. It's just my preferred way to do things. But what they've done is they just regurgitate just a little sliver of local, like kids sports, right? some headline news from your area, but everything else is fluff that is meant to point your thought process into the direction they want to herd you into. And it's evident, especially on the radio. Boy, the afternoon radio shows out here are all right wing. They're all right wing. There's no way for you to get modern media that is unbiased, truthful media. The freedom of the press is gone in my neck of the woods. So, the other thing I want you to do is if you have a smart TV or a smartphone or a smart desktop with speakers, you should download Free Speech TV and replace your news, your television watching with that, because Free Speech TV gives you a lot of great characters in journalists and uh, people who give thought provoking content every day. It's wonderful. I mean, I love to just click it on in the morning and listen as I go. And the podcasters like Heather Cox Richardson, something you should absolutely listen to every day, every day. And there's, for those of you in agriculture, like I am, on YouTube, there's a channel called The Back 40. Oh, cannot recommend it enough. It's so good to help you understand the plight of farmers right now and why they're really getting upset with Donald Trump and the Trump administration. And, oh, where did I hear this? Pod Save America. This is my new favorite phrase. The Doge bags. That are cutting everything and not understanding how agriculture works, how social programs work, how taking care of the poor and needy work, especially since those Doge bags have never been poor or needy, especially these young kids. They're still living with mom and dad. They're still on their, sucking at their teat, if you will, and financially. And they're in there doing things because they don't know what it's like to pay bills. We do. We know that. So that's all I've got for you today. I just, I didn't write this down. I was just thinking about it all day, how we need to understand what we hear, as in the Super Bowl feed, is not the truth. And the truth is out there, but we got to look for it. It's our job to do the work. So I will always bring you the truth. I always check my sources. I always do my research before I come on here. A lot of it is my opinion. However, it's all based in truth. I'm not going to give you a bunch of bullshit. That's just not me. Anyway, from the edge of the Great Red Divide, from this little blue island in the middle of America, this has been the Heartland Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Heidi Henry. I will see you later. Take care now.